Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Training Industry Learning Tech Showcase AI in Training, sponsored by Biz Library, Box of Crayons, isEazy, SweetRush, and Sear Tech Solutions. I'm Sarah Gallo, a senior editor here at Training Industry, and happy to be with you all today. Before we get started, I'll go over just a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use the chat for comments and submit those questions in the Q&A panel. We'll address all of your comments and questions either during the event or at the end of the session during the dedicated Q&A. Also, just a reminder that all of our sessions are being recorded and will be archived on trainingindustry.com. And as usual, you'll receive that follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand sessions. If this is your first Training Industry event, I'd like to send a special welcome out to you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's showcase, as well as through articles on our website, our podcast, magazine, conferences, research reports, all of the things. We would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session, so make sure to share your thoughts on your favorite social media platforms. Now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Scott Mahoney, Chief Strategy Officer at Sear Tech Solutions. Scott, with that, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I will share my screen. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Not yet.
All right. Let me do the share. And we will be up and running. There we go. Hopefully we can see the screen now. All
Yeah,
good? Okay.
looks good.
Thanks, Sarah. And thanks everyone for joining today's session. Whilst it is a learning technology showcase, I'll give you ample opportunity to show how we're using artificial intelligence to support our customers. I want to talk about this from two other perspectives, not so much just the tools, but also the what and the how. So, what goals are we looking to achieve with those tools, which then informs how we use the tools to achieve those goals. And when you think about it from that perspective, you're much better equipped to achieve better outcomes from using the tools. And I keep referring to AI as the tools because that's ultimately what they are. They're just tools. And I look at this from the perspective of not just learning technology, where I've been in the industry for 30 years and my job is Chief Strategy Officer for SearTech, but I actually look at it from the perspective of one of my passions, which is I'm a woodworker. I build everything from high-end furniture to houses. And I never ever start from the perspective of the tools first. I never pick up a tool until I do a few things first. So one of those is I have goals that I need to achieve. So it's the what goals have I got? Why are those goals important? I establish those first. Then from there, I build a plan. And the plan is really looking at, well, do I have certain constraints and environmental factors I need to take into account? So I might have a time constraint. I could have a resource constraint. I could have a skill constraint. All of these things factor into which tools do I need and how to best use those tools to achieve those objectives given those constraints. And again, if you think about the use of tools, you need to think about it from that perspective, which ultimately drives really where this conversation comes from. And it's not about a technology conversation. And whilst, yes, I do understand and agree that AI is a technology, it's one of the most transformational technologies humankind has built to date. This is not a technology conversation in terms of outcome, because ultimately when we think about the goal, the what, it's about, from an organizational perspective, competitive advantage. Every organization is trying to achieve competitive advantage, and 3/4 of CEOs see AI, Gen AI in particular, as the pathway to get there. But I use the word pathway very intentionally because AI is not the thing that creates advantage, right? It's how you execute that does. And if we think about this as almost like an equation, you have a strategy that your business has established. And the strategy is one of competitive advantage, which ultimately is driven by I want to make more revenue. I want to make greater profitability. I want to increase scale and grow faster than my competitors. Well, how do I do that? Well, I do that through a highly capable workforce that can deliver on the promise of my competitive advantage goals. And a highly capable workforce just doesn't happen magically. It has to be curated and it has to be developed so it can be agile and pivot as needed for the business. It also needs to be highly capable to deliver on the things that we need to deliver on at scale. To do that, you need to execute. And if we think about AI in this whole flow of execution, it's really actually a force multiplier. So think of it as almost like a multiplying factor on top of execution to help you execute faster with greater agility to achieve the workforce capability goals that you have to achieve the strategic goals that your business is setting. And so, from that perspective, I want to talk about just briefly SeerTech and what we do and how we help achieve that with our customers. We generally work with very large organizations with complex learning needs that span the gamut of everything from the corporate learning space through to frontline workforce enablement, where we're embedding as part of operational process to ensure that velocity and agility, but to also ensure quality in terms of like manufacturing and their deliverables. But also, a large degree of our customers are really commercial learning focused, where they're selling learning as a product. In order to deliver on that, and certainly deliver on the promise of competitive advantage in each of those industries, you need to be able to work with a partner who thinks the same way and who can work with the organization to achieve those goals. And that's what SeerTech does. And when we think about it, we just don't provide the tools, we also provide the knowledge and experience and that mindset shift that helps achieve those goals. And that's part of the reason why we have such a high retention rate. It's because we're able to not just provide the tools, but constantly guide alignment, realignment of those tools to get the outcomes that you're looking to achieve. And we do that through a highly adaptive platform that can provide not only the ability to deliver on the very traditional sort of top-down learning, but more so learning that is highly fluid now. So if you think about learning, certainly since COVID, it's massively changed in terms of the way that learning is being consumed. So 80% or over 80% now of learning is being consumed as a result of me as an individual choosing to engage with learning, but primarily as performance support. So I need to be able to have an agile platform with agile content that can be produced very quickly, but very much aligned to the needs of the learner who needs to consume that content in that flow of work. And that is very, very important to be able to support that seamlessly so you can scale it and again deliver on that promise of building workforce capability in alignment with achieving competitive advantage. And that's what SeerTech does through our capability set. So, in terms of your role as a training administrator or as a learning leader, it's really about how do you execute using AI, but in alignment with what's needed to be achieved from a business point of view. And this is important because when we talk about the showcase part, I'll keep coming back to your role in this and the way you need to think about your role in this process. So if we think about it again, on the left-hand side, we've got our business. They're focused on, increasing revenue, increasing margin, growing the business faster than competitors to create that competitive advantage. On the right-hand side, you've got your workforce, and your workforce needs to be capable, and you've got to build that capability quickly, but with enough agility to create that springboard for the business to achieve its goals, but also that agility to provide workforce resilience. And you sit in the middle of all of that, right? So you are effectively the facilitator who is taking that raw capability and then molding it in alignment with what the business is trying to achieve. And you're using AI as your force multiplier for execution. And when you think about that, you're thinking about using the tools effectively to achieve the business goals based around your workforce as constraints, right? I've got a finite workforce, I've got certain constraints in terms of time, in terms of resources, in terms of environmental factors, etc., that I have to take into account when I'm choosing my tools and when I'm applying my tools to achieve those business goals. So going back to my woodworking analogy, it's no different, right? To me setting a goal, to me setting a plan, working with my constraints, choosing the right tools, and then using those tools effectively so I don't injure myself. Instead, I create great works. And so, from the perspective of execution and how do you execute, and then which tools do you use, and certainly the showcase part where we talk about how we use those tools, we're really looking at it from four key levers, right? And these four levers, they are the method through which you will multiply workforce capability. So the first one is around increasing demand. And I ran a session last week, actually, uh, similar to this, which was covering off the topic of consider learning like a business or run your learning like a business. And when I think about increasing demand, it's really your learning is product, your customers are your learners, and you want to increase demand or engagement with your learning product for those customers. And the best way to do that is around aligning the motivations of the learner with how you promote your content into those learners so you can increase demand. And that requires a whole bunch of thinking around who is my learner? Why would they engage with my content? What's the value proposition? How do I promote that value proposition? So now you're getting into the domains of marketing, but as a learning leader or as a training administrator, even, you are in the job of promotion and marketing because you're marketing your product to your customers. So we'll talk about how we're using AI to support that. We're also going to get into skills activation, which is more about how do I take skills and actually use them effectively rather than make this some form of overbearing administrative burden that I can't manage long term, which then diminishes value for building workforce capability. So we'll talk about some of the tools we've got there. We'll then go into scaling our operations, which is really about how do we take AI and help it perform tasks that I'm currently doing today, but much faster with a greater level of quality than I can potentially achieve myself. And then what's the output of that, which then leads into proving impact. And this is an area where I'm personally very passionate about, which is actually proving the value of the learning that you're doing. And to be honest, in the past, it's been almost impossible because I've never been able to crunch that much data manually. But today I can because I'm using AI intentionally to help me understand the data that I'm capturing from all of the learning interactions, all of our business goals, all of our capability alignment. And then I'm able to use that data much more effectively to look at, is my learning operating effectively? Am I achieving the return on expectation that I need to for learners to engage them, to keep them engaged, and for them to get outcomes? Are those outcomes translating into business KPI impacts? And is that business KPI impact now translating into return on investment? And that's something that I'll cover off towards the end of the session today. So let's actually start looking at the first part of this, which is about increasing demand. And I want to look at this from the perspective of how AI helps us better parse out metadata. So I'm going to use a tool set that we're now using, which is called MetaLark, that allows us to take content, load content into the system, and as a result of loading the content into the system, actually understand more about the content itself. So from this perspective, I loaded some content which had no metadata associated with it all. So there was nothing in the school manifest file that was loaded that would tell me anything more about this course apart from the name. From that, though, we're able to load it into this tool set, which then parsed out all of the relevant metadata and gave it meaning in the context of learning objectives, descriptions, etc., which I can now use to help with promotion. So if I view the summary of this particular course, I can see that all of this data that was coming out the back end has been parsed out by AI. So this has given me a whole bunch of information, which is very factual and useful, but not necessarily marketable in its own right. But it is the very basis of giving me data, which I can then use to then better align with my learning outcome, which is increasing demand from my customers. So think of this as the first step in gathering more information and gathering more data that I can then use to get a better outcome from learner engagement. And so this has given me not only metadata, which is parsed out of the content, but it's also given me skills data, which is parsed out of the content. So one of the biggest challenges with skills alignment is the administrative overhead of trying to work out, well, what skills does this course relate to? And in this case, it's actually given me the skills and the description or the behavioral indicators that give me alignment to a skills taxonomy and a skills ontology. So in this case, it's using ESCO skills, but you can use it with different skills like SFIA, Workday, custom skills models, etc. And I'll talk about in a minute how we can combine all those different skills models and then normalize those so that they're useful. But ultimately, this data is then able to be consumed by the learning management system to enable marketing and to enable a better alignment between this content and the demand of my customers. So let's look at how we can apply that in the real world. So if I'm going back to metadata, so this is really the first part, right? I've got more metadata now. Awesome. I can now ingest that into our learning management system and I can use that to get better alignment. But now it's like, well, hang on a sec. I've got this metadata. How do I better align that to the needs of creating demand for my customers? So this is where I can use AI to help me. So in this case, I'm wanting to generate my descriptive information for this course, but there's two ways I could do it. I could do it very factually, or I can do it from a marketing point of view. And this is where the mindset shift comes into play because the tools haven't changed, right? The tools that I've used to extract metadata, capture that, store it, and then use it for the purposes of generating like meaningful course descriptions, all of those are the same tools. How I use those will be based around my mindset shift from being looking at learning as very passive in terms of, well, I need to get content out and I need to provide just some course descriptive information versus I actually want to market this content to my audience so they will demand it and engage with it. So therefore I'll get more value from my investment in the content. So in this case, I've got my metadata prompt and I'm just going to cheat because I've gone and copied a couple of prompts from earlier. And I'm just going to do a basic one, right? So this is, give me a short description for this course. So I'm going to get it to generate a short description. And you'll notice that it'll be highly factual. It's taking that data that I've parsed out and it's now giving me information which is not wrong, right? It's actually useful in some respects, but it's not necessarily going to move the needle when it comes to driving me to want to demand the course. So awesome. This is a great factual course description. I could then use that and then paste it in and we're good. But what if I actually said, I want to have something that where you're selling it to me? So this is a different prompt, more of a marketing based prompt where I'm saying from that course description, use a sales type of tone, right, to sell the reason, sell a value proposition to me. So now I'm going to try this prompt and let's see what we get. And the interesting thing is it's again using the same tools, using the same metadata, right? But I'm actually putting it together in a different way, which makes it much more aligned to wanting to sell it to somebody. And again, the only thing that shifted in this process was my mindset. So now I'm looking at this more from the perspective of how do I unlock the secrets to effective fatigue management, right? So this is really powerful because all of a sudden it's now, if I use this particular description, which I will now, and then I can go and pretty it up with a WYSIWYG editor. That becomes the content metadata that I will engage with. So if you're using tools like this already today in your workplace, awesome. If you are looking to get value from these tools, think about it from the perspective of who is the audience, what is the goal I'm trying to achieve with the audience, and then what is the best way to engage that audience so that they will demand in this case, my product. So think about your job is not just regurgitating information, your job is actually about marketing to your audience so that they will consume your content. Which then brings me to the next part of this, which is actually using things like metadata, etc., and more information around you to then start to better promote content and to market content to people so that they will engage it. And part of that is not just the tools like AI that we're using to then drive better alignment and personalization of the content to you, but it's also tools that we're using to capture more information because ultimately, as I mentioned before, AI is a tool set. It's awesome at pattern matching, but in order to match patterns, you need to have data. In order to get data, you need to either ingest the data or you need to capture it as part of somebody's engagement with your platform or other platforms. So in this case, One of our customers, Red Hat, and many more customers are doing this now, but as part of a registration process or as part of the like login, or it could be you're registering an account, or it could be just at certain points in your learning journey, or even just I can go in and add more information. We're capturing information from persona surveys, which are authored in our system. The data is captured in our system, but that data is giving me more of an understanding of who you are and what your motivations are. And this is very free form. You can ask questions all sorts of different ways, but ultimately, by capturing more information around the individual, I can understand a bit more about their motivations, whether they're interested in the certifications, etc. Plus, capture dynamic information in the system based around what they're searching for, what they're abandoning, what they're enrolling into, what people just like you are enrolling into, etc., or searching for. And from that, we put together very hyper personalized um, recommendations and marketing, all using AI to scale it. So you could do this personally if you wanted to invest a whole bunch of time and energy into marketing to people, but realistically, AI is a great enabler, force multiplier for being able to take this data and then make inferences from it to then better promote content to people. So these descriptive information we're capturing as part of a persona survey is so important for getting a greater level of personalization. So when I say personalization, I'm actually talking about things like, for example, these banner ads. So these banner ads are personalized because we know more about you, and AI is saying, well, you know what? I'm going to bring you now into this ecosystem and present certain things based around what I know about you. And so, I'm just going to click through these so you can see different things. But notice that we've also got the metadata we generated earlier to help you with, hey, this looks really interesting. I might engage with it. Following on from that, we also have things like recommendations, which are now coming from more information we know about you. So these recommendations are all driven by Gen AI, where it's looking at that data that we've captured from persona surveys, from your HRAS, CRM, as well as from your behaviors in the system and other people like you, to then recommend certain things. So, for example, in my skill interests, so I've got an area where I can capture more information about my skill interests. So I might have interests in lots of different skills that I may want to engage with, and I might want to select from lots of different skills and even where those skills actually come from. So in this case, these are like ingested LinkedIn skills. Or I can actually go and say, I don't want to do AI strategy anymore. I want to get rid of it. But when I get rid of AI strategy, it'll actually refresh my recommendations and remove recommendations automatically based on me not being interested in the skill strategy piece. So this recommendations piece is so important for engaging learners and creating demand because it's aligning the content that we're recommending highly personalized to you. And because it's tied into a framework like skills interests that are important to me, all of a sudden I've got a greater reason to engage with this content. And the more to the left that these recommendations are, the more aligned it is, like the greater the pattern match behind the scenes that AI has done to me as an individual based on these recommendations. And I can search for recommendations, I can find courses that relate back to this. And again, this is all designed to help with promoting demand. And those skills interests are really important because they're the things that anchor me to wanting to come back, wanting to consume content, wanting to engage, and through that mechanism, building workforce capability that delivers on the promise of your business objectives. And you'll even notice that when I bring up my now filtered catalog where I've got, the skills, I can see that they're relevant. I can remove them from here. I can search further down. I can add additional skills, etc. if I want to. But I can also then see more information around these programs based on the metadata that's now available. So I'm not just showing somebody a course or a tile and a word. I'm actually giving them more guidance as to what they should be selecting and why that's important to them. So again, these are tools that you can use, even if you've got your own system where you've got similar tool sets, just thinking it about a slightly different way from more of a marketing perspective will give you a better outcome. And one thing I will say around skills activation is that only works if you're able to ingest skills and then use those skills in a way which can be non-administratively heavy, but also something where if I'm trying to build a skill, I don't care which skills taxonomy where the skill came from. I just want to build this skill. So when I'm building this skill, it's not my problem to try and work out which skills taxonomy it relates to, right? I'm building a skill in, say, AI prompting. So that skill may be shared across custom skills that you're creating and ingesting in our system, for example. You might have workday skills, you might have ESCO skills, SFIA skills. These are just different models that we're now ingesting into our application and then normalizing or creating equivalencies so that if I build a skill in SFIA and it's like AI prompting, it may equate directly to a skill in Workday that is the same skill, but they just call it something slightly different with slightly different behavioral indicators. But ultimately, if I build a skill in one place, it'll show across those various different taxonomies. That makes learning and it makes skills development so much more accessible because you're able to create equivalencies and map this all automatically using AI. So this is one of the areas where AI has been extremely useful, is processing large chunks of data, mapping out and creating inferences and relationships, and then providing that as an output, which we are ingesting and using to be able to support that workforce capability development at scale to achieve those business outcomes. One of the areas where this is really coming into play and being used effectively is when we think about skills building, it's not just about what we're building in our application, but it's also about providing guidance around the learning experience you get downstream from building skills. So if we think about, there are a lot of AI coaching platforms out there. So one that we integrate directly with is called Generate, and it's a really useful and great AI coaching and conversational simulator that allows you to capture all the interactions that are occurring within that AI framework. So all the conversations, all the areas where you perform well, areas where you're potentially deficient, and we capture all of that information about the back end as XAPI statements. So that means that in our learning records store, we capture those XAPI statements, but then we can actually attribute meaning through AI in terms of how we look at that data and then say, right, well, based on somebody's performance in the AI coaching platform, it looks like they need remedial training in certain areas. And we can automatically either one, force them down the path of doing the training, so automatically enroll them into the programs that align to that deficiency in the AI coaching platform, or we can recommend training based around their performance. It's great for remedial training, skills gap closure, as well as taking people to the next level. Maybe they perform really well in the coaching platform and they're looking at the next opportunity in their role or job. Let's actually take them down that path automatically through very targeted learning based on actual performance. So that's just another area where skills can be activated through creating relationships and inference through data matching. One of the areas when we talk about multiplying your capability as a learning professional to make more to get more success is through intelligent scheduling. And so as part of this, we're able to take historical data, parse it through our scheduling agent, and then create an entire calendar, which might be 1 year's calendar, it could be several years calendar in ahead. Not only does it actually allow you to create the calendar, but to actually better apply the alignment of the instructors, say for example, for the program, based on looking at instructors' skill and capability, net promoter scores, etc., and aligning them to the program to get better quality outcomes from learning delivery. But we can also scale the scheduling piece and do it much faster and take what would take typically 4 weeks to do and do it in 4 minutes. Now, that means you're going to be less administratively burdened and more about the execution of the delivery, which is ultimately that's how you build your capability in your workforce to achieve your business goals. And then finally, from a LEI insights perspective, one of the things we're doing now is taking data from across your learning enterprise and actually saying, well, how effective are you at running your learning data? But also, what is that telling us around issues or problems that you need to be aware of? And so these LEI insights are really about understanding your learning business. And then are there areas of deficiency within your learning business in terms of outcomes that you're achieving or cost overruns, etc.? And then how do I get ahead of that? And then AI is really the prompt tool that allows you to provide or provides more guidance to you that you can drill into to then take action on. And we do this across both measuring the effectiveness and impact of learning. We do it from the perspective of KPI movement, and then we do it across the perspective of return on investment. And that's achieved through 5 different pillars of measurement, which look at 27 different measures, and AI drives all of this. It drives our ability to understand what's going on. It also drives our ability to understand relationships of inference, which if we think about, looking at the learning effectiveness index measure, it looks at how do we then determine what the impact is on KPI and return on investment. And our ability now using AI to do analysis of what's going on in your learning business, apply meaning to your business KPIs, and then determine how that's impacting you from a return on investment perspective is critical to achieving your business goals. So when we think about the front end around making increasing demand, using skills activation to increase capability, using our scheduling tools, etc., to increase your ability to scale your operations, and then using AI to help with understanding what's going on in your learning business and its business impact, that is really where you start to then align your learning tools and its capability back into your ability to deliver on your business promise.
All right. Well, we are at time, Scott. So thank you so much for a great demo with us.
Awesome. I'm sorry we ran out of time a bit, but hopefully there were some good questions that
These
came
just
up.
fly by.
They do. Awesome.
All right. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the session. We will be taking a 15-minute break, but up next we have Kelly and Blake for their session sponsored by Biz Library, Smarter Skill Building with AI-powered role plays. So stick around for that one, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.